Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, Module Leader for TECH2503 Community Media Production. And this is the overview for the short summary for the 18th lecture. And the title is Social Action and Development Problems. I kind of thought I'd take a different track this week because we've really kind of gone down the line and we've really kind of been doing a lot of concept-based work over the last 18 weeks. And, you know, incredible amount of time has gone past. And so what I thought I'd do this week is really kind of ask a series of questions. And what I've done is I've taken and produced a kind of PowerPoint presentation based on the slides that we used in the week 1 and week 2 lectures. So that was the lecture that we did about community media principles and why community media is different. And the lecture that we followed that one on with, which was about community development practices. And so the kind of questions that we're raising, and we have been raising all the way through, I kind of wanted to summarise them and use them. We'll do this as a much more kind of informal discussion-based session. So we kind of, the questions that I've kind of thinking about is a range of questions in terms of things like what are the trade-offs in the kind of models that we use to think about community media. So on the one hand, you know, we've talked about this in terms of sustainable development. Is it a zero-sum game? Is there a limited amount of resources and goodwill and information and knowledge that can be used to regenerate and redevelop and activate communities, independent communities? Or do we, if we take from that, is there a trade-off from somewhere else? So what keeps something and what makes something sustainable? So we kind of look at what the changes that community media can bring about. So we're asking questions about, you know, in a sense of if we're thinking that community media can be a tool for the renewal of and development of communities, in what way and how do we know that that renewal is going forward? So we tend to look for a community media to be able to develop a sense of alternative forms of media, alternative points of view. So again, how do we know what the indicators are of this kind of social change? What can we look to that tells us that change is underway and is taking place and is being embedded? In what way can we think about the social values that community media draws on? And are these values fixed, or are they determined by other factors, or are they kind of there to be reinvented and made anew and kind of practiced, and they emerge from the practices of the participants in different communities? So we've got to think about what the kind of choices are that are ahead of us and how we account for change in our communities and what the kind of tools might be that we can use in order to be able to support and facilitate these changes. It'd be really useful if we relate this back to some of your experience now running the community media cafes and working with John, and thinking about the way that we use our techniques and knowledge to solve problems. So this is fundamentally, if you like, a problem-solving exercise. You know, do we let go of, or how do we navigate around the things that we regard as kind of being fixed, our assumptions and dogmas? And to what extent is the kind of changes that we want to see and the kind of changes that community media represents bound by its context and generated through its context? Is this just simply a kind of functional form of communication, or does it represent something which is different? And if it is different, what's the kind of know-how, the kind of skills, the kind of literacies, the kind of awareness, the thinking that we need to be able to engage in this? So it's one thing to kind of be able to account for the kind of the sense of change. It's another thing then to be able to predict in what kind of direction or what the consequences of that change might be. So we've kind of got to maybe reconfigure our framework of understanding, and we look at that in terms of the kind of the paradigm shift notion. You know, the kind of the sense that once we change the language in which we're basing our assumptions on, we can look at things anew and afresh. So if we change our perspective, do we see things in a new way? So there's kind of lots of questions that we can ask about policies, about the top-down ways of doing things, the old way of representation, the old way of media production, the old way of media industries organisation. And we can ask in a way that I suppose our aim is to identify and work out in what way communities can take charge of their own development. How can they be self-sustaining? And in the process, will a different form or a different definition of community media emerge out of that from the definitions that have been previously articulated? So we're kind of tossing around ideas as ever. This is very much an ideas-based exercise. We're thinking through the concepts on the basis that it'll offer us some practical opportunities to rethink what we're trying to do and how we're trying to achieve things. So lots of questions to be raised, lots of discussion to be had. The notes are posted up as a PDF on the DMU Commons Wiki. The reading associated with this particular lecture is, let me just find it, we're looking at lecture 18. It's the Andrew Feenberg chapter, the Incommensurable Paradigms chapter, which is chapter 15 in the Isaacs book, the Stephen Isaacs book. So that's a difficult chapter to read and look at, but it's an underlying important one because it questions the assumptions that we often hold about things that we use in society and use in daily practice, which may, if we look at them in a different way, will give us a different kind of response. So this is the last lecture before the enhancement week. Hope to see you on Thursday afternoon.